Aneeka, tell us why the extraterrestrials abduct people, please. There are many cases. What happens to these people? They are on board ships, and there are things that are being done to them.
There's no single reason. They're countless, and it's simply impossible to know all the reasons, just the main or recurring ones. Although all races potentially abduct, the main abductors are the small greys. They're known as gardeners, and the garden is the biology of a planet. In a place with slow, low density, what you would call 3D, it takes a while for biology to reflect the soul signal or to copy it as a reflection. So these beings abduct certain people to make genetic changes or to accelerate an evolution. Also to cure them of some disease that could affect their life plan, remembering that each person enters a life with a specific life plan. They cure cancers, or fix autoimmune problems, or whatever is in their power. Many times, a coma is induced in abducted people, and they're in a medical pod for days or weeks, if not longer, and then are returned with a time jump about 10 minutes after abduction on the same night. For example, people report a lot of fear and a lot of abruptness in what the greys do to them, but this is more than anything because they have no tact, and they just abduct. They do whatever they have to do to people. They return them to their place of origin, and they go to abduct more. They don't have time or understanding to be careful, tactful, or nice. They just take, work, and return the people, like it's a mass production line. But other races also abduct from a myriad of reasons. For example, putting a tracking device in their starseeds or in the people of their interest. The famous implants. Others are by arrangements, since the person to be abducted has contracts to work with them while on Earth as humans, whether or not they are of their race, although more usually they are. Many races have arrangements with their starseeds where they enter Earth as agents of that ET civilization to carry out a specific job or plan, and their home races will support them from their ships. There are also abductions of the type called MELAB, where the terrestrial military, whether or not in collusion with some non-human race, abduct a subject of interest to put implants or for mind-controlled reasons. The amount of information and data would make this topic huge.
Asks Robert, can races do experiments on humans that are not their starseeds?
Yes, the best example are the reptilians and the Major that invasively abduct or annoy all other races, imposing their ideas and agendas.
Why do reptiles abduct?
Everything is for agendas of manipulation and control. I cannot know why in detail, but it is always to mind control or to insert two-way chips to control a subject or to modify their thoughts and with that, their frequency to be consistent with being parasited by them.
Asks Robert, what methods do they use to make humans forget abduction? And how do they manage to paralyze them or whatever they do? How do they manage to capture humans? And why many humans have negative experiences with those little greys?
What is done is to induce a coma using destructive waves at specific frequencies. In itself, it's not that they erase the memory of a subject, but they prevent it from being formed in the first place. They use frequencies in arrangement or similar to those of the brain during sleep, but the system is not perfect because many times the abductee does remember things. I insist that it's not that they erase the memory, but they prevent them from being formed by putting the brain in a state of drowsiness, which in itself causes the individual not to distinguish in detail if he or she lived something or only dreamed it. The paralysis comes from the same sleepiness mechanism, hacking the body with specific frequencies to use its very systems of prevention of movement during sleep. Those natural systems so that a sleeping person that is being chased does not run out of bed.
Asks Robert. Can you befriend those greys? Can they empathize with the abductee?
No, or in a very limited way. They don't think like you. The interaction between species is difficult, more so if they perceive you as just their job. They just want to finish with you, hurry, and that's it. Since that night, they still have another 22 abductions scheduled to do, and it's already 1 a.m. They must hurry. They don't have time for kindness.
Asks Robert. So, with the regression, they could recover the memory, the abductees. Hypnotic regression.
Yes, in the exact same way that a dream can be recovered.
Okay, thank you. My question. Gardeners. How do they know who to bring? From whom do they receive the instructions?
The races in general send their instructions to them to do the job. In other words, they delegate to the greys the work that they could otherwise do themselves. Virtually any race can call on them in exchange for supplies, bases, technological cooperation, among many other things.
Asks Robert. In order not to take risks, they delegate power, so that the abductee does not remember his star family?
It could be, but mostly it is because many races find it easier to delegate the problem or the job, so they do not have to go to the planet where the person lives and abduct themselves, since the Greys will go to that planet anyway, because they have other contracts.
So they abduct them with the body and never have accidents, wife entering their room, etc. Someone could see them, right?
It is not usual, but there have been cases where they are found in the act, generally by frequencies using the multi-purpose tractor beam. They put the whole family to sleep while they work on the member that interests them.
Asks Robert. Do you have to flee if you see the Greys? Can you escape from them?
If they want to stop you, they will. If you can flee, they're not interested. They can paralyze you in seconds, using their frequencies that alter brain waves, causing you to fall asleep.
Why do they heal some and others not? Does it depend on the life plan? But this life plan has not considered getting sick? It catches people by surprise?
That depends on the contracts of the life plans they have. Also, because whether they are or not of a race that has hired them to do the work. If they're not, they will tend to ignore other people, whether or not they need their intervention. For example, many people with cancer can be cured, but by life plan, these people already had their way out of the physical state, so they cannot intervene. The Greys work strictly under the same rules of the Federation and or other organizations that may also call them. Nothing is random there in 3D.
Asks Robert. Has Taygeta ever called them? Do some work?
I am sure, but I don't have the data. What I do feel is that it is unusual if it has been done. because it is not the style of Taygeta or many other races either.
Asks Robert. Are they careful not to leave evidence? And from what I see, they are very knowledgeable about human anatomy and can solve any health problem.
Yes, they are, but what helps them is that everything is used by energy. That is, they bring people up with a tractor beam, and they do tests, and they put them to sleep with energy manipulated to perfection. It is difficult for them to leave evidence, like a glove thrown somewhere or something like that.
What is the implant doing? Where is it located? What exactly does it track?
It is implanted in several places, not just one. The most common one is under the skull, where the spine begins. Then arms, hands, and legs. The subcutaneous right in the area of the heart is also common.
And what does it do?
It is a piece with indefinite shape to avoid being seen as something artificial. It takes its energy from the same electrical biomagnetic system of the being that has it.
But what does it track? The geographical position, like the chip in the dog, or more things, health, etc.?
All the data that they can get from the subject, yes. From the geographical position, their habits, where they go, and their state of health, yes.
Their habits? Like what habits? I have mine under my skull too, right?
Absolutely everything the subject of interest does. Yes, you have it.
Asks Robert. Is it normal to re-abduct the same abductee?
Yes, more than normal. If you're abducted once, it will most likely be with you throughout your life.
Comments Robert. Wow, the same abductee. At what point is the implant put in, like mine, for example, when the person is abducted? So I was abducted after entering the immersion.
Yes, exactly. This is the most usual time, but it can be in the womb.
And what interesting habits of mine have you learned from my life?
What for you is normal and boring, for us is exotic and new. Knowing how to live there, how it is to have no memory and still be, how they think, how they're all manipulated, how to prevent them from being manipulated, looking for keys to transform the entire human race into something more positive, understanding how time works, seemingly fixed there, linear and with little or no lateral diversity, understanding the dynamics of the entire civilization, invaluable data for the entry or not of other souls or people of the race to which I belong. That and more.
All that is coming from my implant?
Not only, also from the interaction with you, but yes, a lot comes out of the implant.
In what way does it come out? What do you see from there? I don't understand mechanics. How does all this come out there on the other side? Is it presented on the screen or how?
It comes out as biometric data.
What is that?
Data about heart rate, breathing rate, blood glucose, temperature, organ function, all of that.
Asks Robert. So we agreed that there is no implant detector. There is nothing that can capture that implant emits a frequency.
Yes, they can be detected by humans, but you need very sensitive equipment. There are very high frequencies. Virtually all starseeds have implants.
Asks Robert. What tests are done on abductees? What criteria is followed to choose them?
practically everything that can be done to a living organism. See the progression of its DNA through the environment, how it has degraded, its alterations and mutations, and why they have occurred. With them, they also correct, by means of frequencies or by medical pod, the serious problems that they find, and they may interfere in the life plan of the person using that body. Criteria: it's any real person, not the Matrix one. But it is either the responsibility of their species or race to take care of their biology and that they can fulfill their life mission, or it can also be the responsibility of the gardeners working for these races. This clearly explains why the Greys have been seen, according to witnesses, working in the presence of any other race that is clearly supervising them, like White Nordic, Mantis, amphibious or reptile races, and even human military. When they are found supervising it, it's very possible that they are training them in the particularities of the species that has hired them. In many respects, these species of Greys, not all of course, are like space mercenaries who do this kind of dirty work for other races in exchange for anything. They have little inventiveness in general, and that is why they are so often confused with being robotic beings of organic origin, biorobots. In many cases, yes, it is true, but they're usually just little Greys doing their job.
Asks Robert. Many ask me if there are astral abductions.
I would say that is another topic, but there are. Just that what is astral for you is just another plane here. In other words, abductions are far from being an exclusive phenomenon on Earth. They occur on any planet, but more in places where scientific or medical development is very low. For example, in so-called pre-industrial societies, or not interstellar. For example, in Taygeta, I do not know if there have been abductions in a long time, whatever that means in terms of time, because the technology and medical level is already very high.
Asks Robert. Are there abductions also in Taygeta by superior races of other planes?
There aren't. For what? Abductions are mainly for the study of the evolution of a species, its DNA, correct alterations, and defects or genetic damage. This mostly. There are other reasons, of course, but societies like Taygeta are already so advanced that they take care of that for themselves, so no help from gardeners is needed.
How do we know what the life plan of the starseed is? Because you said that what can interfere with the plan is fixed. And how do people other than that person himself know this?
As in the case of what was programmed in an immersion pod, everything is known there. It is then a matter or decision of each person whether or not they share their life plan. Another thing is that from above, planes above the 5D, the whole plan of life is known without technological help, and instructions can also come from the Greys from those planes directly.
Wow. Comments Robert. Wow, the Greys can work from planes higher than yours.
At least get the instructions.
And one thing, if you say that only your race does the abductions, then if you are abducted by Greys who are with the Mantis, are you of the Mantis race?
It is very possible, yes, logically. But that doesn't mean that the Mantis aren't looking as they're serving an engine. The fact that another race is there does not mean that the person is of that race, only that there is a person of that race watching. Greys do about 50 abductions a night, sometimes more.
Asks Robert. Last question. What exactly is the cause for not remembering the abduction?
Because they come to you with a brainwave inducer that puts your mind to sleep almost completely. Sometimes it fails. That's why people remember it. But when it works well, as it is in most cases, they don't remember anything. That is to say that the vast majority of people have been abducted multiple times and do not remember and continue through their lives without knowing anything about anything, even dreaming of being an astronaut when they already were the night before.
And why does it fail? Why many people remember?
Because the technology is not perfect and the brain could not be put to sleep properly. It also depends on the frequency and strength of each person. High frequency ones have a tendency to remember, being that the low frequency ones only remember nightmares. Although this is relative, that is why many people remember feeling terror when it was just a normal procedure.
Asks Robert. What character do gardeners have? Are there males and females?
Very serious, efficient, little or not at all emotional. There are no genders. Most are born from a replicator medical tube. Many species of greys are plants biologically. There are 165 species of grey at least.
Do gardeners have starseeds on Earth?
I don't know.
Asks Robert. What do you mean they are plants? What do they eat?
They are plants. Their cells are plant-like. Their veins contain sage, and they consume the same nutrients as plants, and they need solar radiation to digest their food. They're plants. This has been known on Earth since the 1950s. With the grey that they captured from Roswell and brought to Wright-Patterson Base, EB-1 was called. They had to call botanists to help them when he got sick.
Do they speak?
No, they use telepathy exclusively, like plants. Although some plants communicate with sounds and frequencies that can be viewed as spoken messages, but they do not communicate with each other in this way, but with other species such as insects. The basis for this are many species of Taygeta plants.
Asks Robert. What clothes do they wear? What do they smell like?
They smell bad, like rotten with sulfur, and they wear overalls or one-piece spacesuits.
Asks Robert. Wow, can they communicate with plants on Earth?
All the time. They don't only abduct human persons, they also abduct animals and plants. But of course, people don't know about this.
But where do they live? Do they have their own planet? Or always with other races as their helpers?
They have bases, but only some species have planets. Zeta Reticuli have many own planets and also throughout the constellation of Orion, but others have lived their entire existence on a ship. They only live in their ships.
Asks Robert. How do they feel about humans?
They don't feel anything. They don't emote. They just work.
Asks Robert. How many been captured here on Earth?
Yes, they are the species or group of species that the military has captured the most.
Asks Robert. Do you know if Gosia or I have been abducted?
100% yes, if not 110% yes.
But you said Taygeta doesn't do this.
No, but the Greys do, and many times they're hired from above, not from Taygeta as you know it, higher planes. And if you're a starseed, of course you have been abducted, and your mothers also, whether or not they're starseeds.
And how do they communicate with higher realms?
They communicate telepathically.
Asks Robert. Do you know roughly when was our last abduction? While we are with you, have they abducted us?
I can't know that, but I don't think it was recently, because we have our eye on you for at least 3 years. We would know.
Asks Robert. Aneeka, last question. Is there a way to stop those frequencies that alter the brain waves by making you fall asleep? I mean, the ones used by grey gardeners.
The person should be immersed in a magnetic field between -0.5 and -4.5 hertz or cycles per second, preferably cyclically alternating between these frequencies. The amplitude of the hertz wave depends on what is programmed in the device of the Greys. For that, you need a frequency sensor and connect it to a computer that controls the magnetic field. Program in your device the opposite destructive frequency to that used by the Greys device. I have to retire for the day.
Comments Robert. Okay, thanks for your time, Aneeka. See you tomorrow.
Thank you. We talk later.